What's going on, everybody? Thanks for joining us here on ESPN Esports. We are on YouTube, Twitter, the ESPN app, not on Twitch this week. We are hosting the Brawl 10K. Lawler putting on an excellent Rocket League tournament. That's happening all week on our Twitch account. So for this week only, all of our live content on the other platforms. But as we do every single Tuesday, 6:30 p.m. Eastern, it is the Rift Rewind, our ESPN League of Legends program. Emily, Tyler, Jacob, with you. Now, you may notice a little bit of a format change this week. We decided to shake things up. Emily, we thought, you know what? Let's take a look at the show we normally do, and we're just going to take a bomb, maybe one of those wolf bombs that I have back in my setup there, and we're just going to drop it right in the middle of a rundown. How does that sound?
Sounds good to me.
So that's exactly what we're going to do. We're going to try some new things. We're going to try some new segments, and we're going to do some new thoughts. We're going to have a lot of fun along the way. I am following on YouTube. If you are if you are watching us on YouTube right now, feel free to use that as our central chat. If you have any questions, comments, or thoughts, it is up here. So with that in mind, let's start with something new. This is what we're going to do. We're going to do a little game called Love and Hate. What that is that we all around the horn here picked one thing we loved and one thing we hated from League of Legends competitive last week. 4 major leagues, tons of games, some surprises, some stuff we looked at and just shook our heads, and we're going to talk about it here. Jacob Wolf, I'm going to start with you all the way in the great state of Texas. We're going to go around our loves first. What did you love? Pick one singular thing you loved from League of Legends this past week.
Team Vitality roster. It has to be, right? Like I thought they would be fine last split, but coronavirus and visa issues thought otherwise and slapped them right across the face in the spring. And now they don't have it anymore. They've done a little bit of roster shakeup, and damn, they look good. This is a team that can make playoffs. Maybe that's a hot take after just 1 week, but like, I loved it. I loved seeing them be competitive in the LEC. I think that they, like I said, they got like an unfair hand because of what happened to them because of COVID and visa issues in the spring. And yeah, I like the additions. Melka is finally be able to play. Labrov is the new support. Finally, this team is really kicking. It only took 3 changes to get there, but we're seeing good stuff out of Team Vitality. I was impressed in their first week of competition.
What did you think, Emily? What did you think of Malitza? He had a pretty strong weekend.
Yeah, I mean, Malitza was great. I think Labrov is definitely my, not like, I guess player to watch on this team. I know a lot of people who've been following Europe have kind of been wanting him to make his debut, and I thought he had a really great one. I mean, you know me, I'm a sucker for teams that have like a lot of young talent on them and just kind of go out and figure themselves out on the Rift as they play. I can see Vitality doing that. They have kind of the veteran leadership component in Kabashard in the top lane. So it's a really good setup as well to succeed. And I wouldn't be surprised if we kind of see them slide into maybe that like Mad Lions position that we saw from Mad Lions last split.
I would compare them similarly to Misfits. Misfits is another team that has like similar roster construction. They have some young players. They have some veterans in Kabe and Fabivin around them. So like, yeah, I'm excited to see both more Misfits and Vitality as the split continues, because I think both have upsides that we don't quite understand because we don't have enough data on these players playing together, which is exciting. It's good to see that.
We're going to talk about Vitality a little bit later on in the show as well. Let's keep the love train going. Emily, what was your love from this week in League of Legends?
So I like the look that we saw from EG. When I heard from them that they were considering from both Zazel and Artemis, and I talked to them before the split started, they were considering and had been training with a 7-man lineup. Obviously, we saw the same starting 5 that we had previously seen in spring. And they looked great. Like, they looked really confident. They were picking compositions that they knew that they could execute really well. And I mean, they have a tough week ahead of them because I believe they have C9, and then I forget who their other opponent is coming up. But like they do have a tough week in week 2. But I think EG got off to a really strong start, albeit like one of the games was a very one-sided stomp against CLG that was just like entertaining to watch from just stomp perfect game perspective. But yeah, I mean, I think it's a great meta for EG, and I feel like they've already figured out a lot of the kinks last split. So I really just want to see this team continue to improve on like the minutia that can turn them into a truly great team. And despite all the 7-man roster stuff, I hope they stick with this lineup because I think it's a strong lineup.
They play Cloud9 on Saturday and Team Liquid on Sunday.
Yeah.
Hey, Tyler, if they win both those games, especially against Cloud9, are you going to be ready to say that there's a new contender in the LCS?
They're going to win both of those games, Arda, and I think that goes into my love of the week, but we can get into that in a few seconds. I do like the confidence that EG has been playing with early on. I think the biggest thing for me has been Kumo. Kumo looks mightily improved from last split, and I think it's it's not a surprise when, teams actually, I know they have the 7-man roster, so Hooni's looming behind Kumo's back, but when you actually give these rookies time to actually play in the LCS and don't just yank them after a few poor performances, sometimes they'll actually improve and actually become really good players. So maybe some other teams could, figure out maybe investing in young talent and actually, playing them even through their struggles sometimes is the right answer instead of just importing 12,000 players. But, it's NA, so that's a lot to ask for.
I think to the Hooni point too, I know people on the team told me that they've been working really closely together. So that's another thing too. Like presumably Hooni is actually helping kind of train Kumo in some of these things. So that could also be another reason behind his improvement.
We're going to talk about Hooni and basically the packages that Evil Geniuses have, the 7-man roster. And by the way, Emily wrote an article all about this. That's available at ESPN.com/esports. I spoke to Artemis this week for Coach's Corner, and both of them, the sentiments are aligned there, right? Like in the sense that there's the Hooni Deftly package, there's the Kumo blanking a bang package. Sorry, bang package. Yeah, sorry, bang package. And bang. Yeah,
two-time world
the Kumo
champion.
bang. Yeah, that guy. Yeah, the guy that's been who's done very well in the spring split. Yeah. Hey, at least I remembered Hooni. Okay, anyway. So those are the two packages there. And obviously, Artemis was saying that it's going to be based on performance. And, well, EG had a great week 1. EG Academy did not. They went 0-2. So if you're basing it on performance, then, well, I guess the Kumo Bang train will roll on at least for the foreseeable future. But I just think, I mean, we're going to talk about this later, I know, but like, just the fact, Jacob, just the fact that Hooni he went from the highest paid guy in the league to
second highest paid guy in the league.
Pardon me.
Highest paid guy in the league is Impact, top laner for Team Liquid, but second highest paid guy in the league. Yes.
Still with the memed $2.3 million salary across 2 years. From that to battling, possibly may not even get a look in the main in a main LCS team this entire split.
Yeah,
it's just a crazy turn of events.
You have to be a little humbled by that if you're Hooni, right? Like, dude made out with like $400,000 in a 6-month window from January to, or 5-month window from January to May, or whatever, November to May, I guess technically, so 6 months in a November to beginning of May. But you got to be a little humbled by the fact that you're playing in Academy right now. Hooni gets a lot of flack for being a little bit of a tilter, which I'm sure there's an aspect of that, but I don't think that like he's someone that would be upset by having to play Academy in the entire split if that's what it boils down to. So
So speaking of playing Academy and having a great showing in the LCS, at least so far, Tyler, that brings us to your love.
Oh, Arda. Oh, sweet Arda. Last week I sat here and I regaled you of the future of Team Tactical and their ultra brilliance on the train ride to Worlds, baby. And 2 games in, the Tactical train is chugging. We're going along beautifully. They smashed TSM. They embarrassed Doublelift. They crushed Golden Guardians. Not really crushed them. It was actually a pretty good game. All things considered for NA, it was actually a pretty decent game. They beat Golden Guardians. They crushed TSM. Tactical chugging his way all the way to China, baby. It's so good to be on this train. It feels so relieving that we're just 1 week in, and I can already guarantee that Tactical's going to be top 3 in All-Pro this split. I'm so ready. I'm so on the hype train. It's beautiful.
Stop doing this to yourself.
Right now,
it's
so good.
Like,
it's so good.
That's actually, like, no offense to Tactical, but that's actually, like, massive props to Core, too, I think.
Oh, yeah.
Honestly.
Well, that's one of the reasons why I'm on the Tactical train.
That's the huge thing, is Core is... It's kind of like Crisp when everyone was like, LWX is great, and I'm like, but Crisp, he's right there.
Yeah. That was in my whole spiel last week of why do I believe in Core? Why do I believe in Tactical so much? Because Core could have asked for anyone. If Core told Steve, I really want if he was like, I want Viper, go to Korea and grab Viper for $1 million. You think Steve wouldn't do that? Steve probably would do that for Core. But Core was like, I like this Tactical kid. He has potential. I see a diamond in the rough. And Core is polishing that diamond, and I'm on my train to China, the Tactical train of Team Liquid, and the horizon is beautiful, Arda.
Wow.
Only thing ahead is sunshine and beauty. There's a few clouds in the way that they're gonna have to get through to, those clouds are pretty scary, but everything else is so clean as they're just rolling over teams like TSM and Golden Guardians. I love Tactical. I love Team Liquid this split. It's beautiful.
The final destination is a Summoner Cup station for you, huh?
Oh. No, not so. Group stages.
That's
Group stage.
Okay, sorry.
Group stage plaza. We're going to Group stage plaza.
Taking it too
far. Yeah, we're going to Group stage plaza, and then we're going right off the rails. But
Group stage plaza.
We're on the way to Group stage plaza, baby.
And then there's going to be massive delays after that, and the train won't get out. Okay.
No, it's going right off the rails.
Tyler's a certain amount of delusional. He's not delusional enough to think that Team Liquid can make it to the World's Final.
No, we're going to Group Stage Plaza. Group Stage Plaza is where we're going, and it's a really clear ride from here. So get ready, Group Stage Plaza. After that, we're done. But Group Stage Plaza is a good first step for Tactical, the genius of NA.
Well, hey, if you ask Doublelift like I did, he firmly believes that an NA team can and should make Worlds at some point, and he wants it to be TSM. But that's a conversation for several minutes from now, later on in the show. My love, and look, okay, I owe you all an apology, okay? I am man enough to admit when I'm wrong, okay? It's very rare that this happens. Let's just acknowledge that. I'm usually right, okay? I think we can all agree on this show, Jacob in particular.
All right, last pick, Piyush.
Piosik. Piosik. Yeah, that was pretty off. I think you had Golden Guardians going far in last season's bracket, too. That was pretty bad.
99.6% of the time, and yes, I did the math, I am 100% correct. But last week on the show, I did say that if the standings were to stay the same in the LEC, that we would be in for a very boring split, and that it would be not fun to cover the LEC, and I would quickly tire of seeing much of the same in the LEC. And after watching week 1 of the LEC, I'm definitely wrong. I will own it. I had a lot of fun watching the LEC. I watched every game, and it was a hell of a lot of fun. In particular, because a lot of teams that you would normally think would sweep the weekend in a super week lost a couple games or two or more. And some teams that you folks predicted would do well, like Rogue, did really well. So We are doing very well in the LEC, so that's what I loved. I loved the fact that I can enjoy this excellent league, and I will simply leave my predictions with the LEC behind and make new ones.
You're converted. You've been converted.
As the person who
Congratulations.
yelled at you the most last week, I accept your apology.
Thank you. I needed your acceptance the most, actually, because I was like really like, but
that was a tilter, honestly. Although I'll say, I think even regardless of results, LEC is always super fun to watch. But for a lot of reasons, the rookies that we were just talking about with Jacob's love. But I think this was a kind of a banger of a super week that there's
really
some pretty
was.
Interesting things happened.
Now, I will say that there are some familiar things like Schalke being at the bottom of the standings. That feels a little familiar. Fnatic being near the top of the standings. That also feels familiar. But I just love how everything else is in complete disarray, Jacob.
Well, they are not in our rundown in another part of the show, so I just want to bring them up here while we're on the note of LEC standings. How about Origin? Woof.
Well,
Woof.
Yeah, they're the biggest disappointment. We already made these predictions, Jacob.
Okay. They are the biggest disappointment. I agree. I think all of us thought, but what a weird week, right? Because they beat G2. Then they got clobbered by SK and Misfits. So I'm confused. Is G2 bad? I don't think so. But is G2 bad, or is Origin just like hella inconsistent? Where do we kind of land on that? My thought is they're pretty inconsistent.
I think Origin is who we thought they were. I think G2 will get into G2 later. It's G2. I have zero doubts that they will, by the end of the season, be in the finals, most likely winning. If I'm Origin right now, I think we have to look at the larger picture, right? Because, like, I know you could speak of this more in depth, Jacob, but, like, Astralis right now, not in the best place. The umbrella company of Origin, they spent a lot of money. There's been some drama. You know, maybe Origin can bring Device in. He could play some games. Maybe that could boost morale for Origin. But right now, it's what I thought. Like, they're a very, very high ceiling, not high ceiling, they have high ceiling players. Like Alfari, I still think is one of the best players in the league. I think we can all agree Alfari is a monster. He's one of the best top laners I've seen in the world currently, and I would go on a limb saying he's top 10 easily, top 5 maybe. But in upset, they spent a lot of money on. He's proven himself. But Nuke Duck, you know, it's hard. Like, I think there's this thing about Nuke Duck where everyone thinks of him up here when he's really, you know, more of a 7 or a 6 most of the time. So Origin is not the most fun team to watch, but I think they'll probably even out to make playoffs and then probably have a disappointing 3rd or a 4th or 5th finish, and then they'll probably swap out a lot of players and we'll continue on.
Don't let Yamato hear you say that, because Yamato spent a lot of time last split singing the praises of Nuke Duck.
So I do just want to say, before we're too harsh on G2, I know they're talking about them later on the show. Our condolences to Perks. Somebody just reminded me I missed the tweet that his father passed away from cancer.
I was gonna bring that up in the G2 section later.
Yeah, and I was told that they didn't. I was just told by somebody LEC related that they haven't gotten a lot of practice the last couple of weeks because both of that and also a few other things, but sort of that pertinent among them, that their mid laner has been out of commission because of his dad's been sick. So condolences to Perks and his loved ones.
And completely understandable that your mind would be elsewhere if you're dealing with something like that, right? So absolutely. That notwithstanding, still the rest of the LEC is definitely in flux, and that uncertainty often creates chaos, which is a lot of fun to watch. So results that didn't involve G2 also contributed to a very, very interesting week in the LEC. So that's what we loved this past week in League of Legends competitive. Let's talk about what we hated. What sucked? What was the worst? What was just plain awful? What was a dumpster fire? What was pure trash? What was going to Group Stage Plaza and then just like completely kicking the train down and never leaving that station ever?
I'm so excited, Arda. I'm so excited for Worlds. I'm so excited.
Jacob, what did you hate?
Immortals, what the hell are you doing? Like, that's just my thought, right? Like, I said this last week, and I said this, I think, privately to Arda, too, when we were talking relative to Xmithy. What are you doing? Like, they're investing in talent like Potluck, who make no sense to me. whatsoever. We've seen the guy get his chance. He's not like this. It's not like he's like Blabber. Like he's going to be the next Blabber. You give him his shot and he makes good. We understand what the quality of this player is, and it's not very good. Like, I said this previously. I like Zabatine and Keaton a lot as individuals. I think they're very nice guys. I've been very disappointed by what I've seen from a performance perspective of the players that they are putting on the Rift, both in Optic and Immortals for the past year and a half. And I don't get it. Like, I was very critical, if you remember, of the SOAS pickup and the Ica pickup. Still don't understand both of those. Nothing against either of those guys either, because I personally know both of them and they're good dudes. But like, why? Why are you using your import slots on those two people in the first place? And then like the rest of this roster is just a dumpster fire. Like I don't get it. There's zero, like when I look at Immortals, I go like there's zero upside here. And like I'm not gonna shame McSmithy. Dude grabbed the bag, he took it over TSM, he took it over elsewhere, but like if I was him, I'd want to be traded to TSM right now. Right? Like that would make some sense to me because there's nowhere to go on this Immortals roster. Like this team's terrible. And everyone consistent in the league seems to think they're pretty terrible. At least with like Golden Guardians and CLG, I can make some like arguments that there's some upside in some of those players that they're taking risk on. Like I think people like Wiggly can grow further. I think having DeMonte, he can grow further too, right? Like I don't see any of that in Immortals. We know what every single player on this team is. We've seen them play for years at the highest level of League of Legends, and it's not impressive. Right? Like, or it hasn't been in a while in the case of like SOAS, right? Give him some credit. He was really successful and a very good player once upon a time. But like last year with Misfits is awful. This spring was not very good either. So I don't know. Like I hate this Immortals roster in terms of, I don't hate the people on it, but I don't like the way that it's put together because I think there's literally no high upside to it. This is not a team that makes playoffs. This is the 7th to 10th place team. And it just like blow it up. Like once COVID-19 is over and you're able to go recruit some more players, like blow this roster to hell, please. I'm over it.
Hey, Emily, someone in our YouTube chat said that they thought that Potluck was actually the best player on Immortals. How did he do from a jungle perspective this weekend?
I mean, he was fine. I think the issue is like if you're looking at the roster construction, it's not individual players, but like for example, I'll actually defend the SOAS pickup a little bit more because I think he's really smart about the game and I think he's a good player to have if you're looking at and I talked to them about their roster building at the beginning of the year where you're looking at the Smithy SOAS duo, right? Trying to like be the two veteran voices on the team to organize it. And I think Potluck was fine. Like I don't feel like you can point to their performances this past week and be like, Potluck was the problem at all, actually. But I think that from a roster construction standpoint, this roster no longer makes sense without Smithy in the lineup, only because the whole idea behind the construction, from what I understood, was you have SOAS and you have Smithy, and they're two like really strong veteran talents with a really good understanding of how to play the game. Like, just getting into interviews with these guys, half the time I just like want to pick their brain about how to play League of Legends, honestly, because they're just both really smart about it. And then you're kind of like raising up the rest of the roster with that, right? And it doesn't make sense anymore if you take Smithy out, regardless of what you thought of like his quote unquote individual jungle performance. I actually think this could be, as a related aside, I think this could be a pretty good meta for Smithy. So, you know, that is the problem I have with the Immortals lineup, is if you're basing it on the initial ideas behind the construction, that no longer works if you're swapping Smithy out.
Yeah, I just want to be clear. I'm not blaming this week or any of their performance specifically on Potluck. I was just saying him, like every player on this team. This is a wide statement. We understand what they are. And
I asked because Emily knows the jungle position better than anyone, and I just saw that in the chat.
I'm just saying I understand the upside of every single player on this team because I've watched enough of them over their career, and I don't think that there's superior room for growth at this point unless somebody pulls a rabbit out of a hat. So like they are what they are, and I'm disappointed that they are what they are because it doesn't seem like they're like striving for excellence here.
Immortals can stop I understand, their point, right? They want to get Soaz and Nick Smithy. You want to get two really smart players on the same team. But when you go for that strategy, you want to have an ace player. You want to have a star. You need a player that can carry. You need an upset. You need, someone in the AD carry position that can take over games. You need a double lift. You need a star AD carry or a star mid laner like Jensen or Power of Evil. You need, so if you're going to have a top jungle duo that's very experienced and very smart and they play a slower style of game, you need that carry. Who the hell is the carry on Immortals? Who is that oomph to put Immortals over the top? Ica? Apollo? Austin? Who's on?
Altec? No.
Altec? There's no oomph. It's like you're setting up the board for nothing, right? This is... It's ridiculous to have this kind of setup and be like, okay, you're setting the table up. Who's going to slam dunk the ball? Who's going to be the ace? Who's going to be the player that gets all the kills? They don't have that player. So the entire structuring of the roster was fundamentally wrong when you don't have that big name player, that ace player you can rely on to carry games. When you have, it doesn't matter how many great supportive players or how many great intelligent players you have on the roster, if you don't have that carry player to put it over the top. Like Bengi without Faker, if it was just Bengi by himself, he would have had a pretty mediocre career. It was having Bengi with the greatness of Faker and Piglet and Bang that, made Bengi such an amazing player. And the same thing with Smithy. Smithy excels when he has players that can carry and he can support getting to that level. He has no one on this team who can actually pull through more times than not. Ica has had some games. He's had some games where he's carried and he's been that ace player, and Altec as well. But it's not consistent enough. And if you want to be a top team, even in North America where the competition isn't that great, except for maybe a team or two, you need to have that player. And Immortals does not have an ace. There's not a single player on this roster you could say that's an ace player. There's a lot of C and B players on Immortals, no S tier.
Alternatively, you could just not do that and bring up actual NA talent because this is ideally a roster construction that we've seen work really well in Europe, right? Where you have, sure, you're gonna have bumps on the road, you're gonna have some really bad games too. Like there are going to be some really bad performances, but ideally, there's a really strong case across multiple esports right now, to be quite honest, of having a few veteran players, and so as Nick Smithy are honestly some of the smartest veterans I can think of to have on a team, and then new talent. This is another opportunity where we can kind of prod NA and be like, hey, this is perfect. Instead of just trying to go for we want to squeak into playoffs, I know that the summer split matters, etc. But still, this is a great opportunity to take a chance on maybe some younger talent that hasn't had the same opportunities that an Apollo or a Potluck or even Ica, who played over in Europe's regional leagues and also in the LEC forever ago and when it was EU LCS have had.
This is why you pick up a North American, a young North American support. The solution to Hakuo underperforming is not Gate. I'm sorry, right? It's just not. And we see, to your point about LEC, what team has done this well, actually? Misfits this season. Literally, Dinnick had his moments where he kind of looked lost. Guess what? They go and get Doss, someone else who's younger. It's the same thing with Jack Troll and with Jack Troll and Lebrov on Fidelity.
Yeah.
It's just go get somebody younger, right? Go invest. If we are in a franchise, this is what blows my mind about North American League of Legends. We are in a franchise system, right? Unless you are, and look, most of the teams in the LCS are going to be bottom feeders. There will be probably 4 or 5 teams, 5 teams that will be at the top of the league. Everyone else, I think, can take a game off of each other any point in time, right? Those top teams are probably going to be Cloud9, Liquid, Evil Genius, FlyQuest, and TSM, right? Maybe there's 1 or 2 more I'm missing. But the other 5, people can just take games off of each other. You're probably not going to be last 3 splits in a row, which is how you get kicked out. If you are the last place team for 18 months, you are eligible to lose your license to be in the LCS. That's pretty unlikely that one team is going to do that, unless you're literally throwing because you don't have money. You're probably not in the LCS at that point anyway if you don't have the money. You're probably going to sell your team. So why don't, if you're going to be middle of the pack and COVID-19 is going to restrict you from going and getting big import from South Korea or Europe, why don't you just invest in young talent? right? Like, if you're throwing in the towel anyway, you may as well do it on take some flyers. But that's not what's happening at all. In fact, we get Gate and Potluck, right? Like, and Alltech, right? Like, we understand who these players are. At least with the LEC, and this is what makes NA a meme, because they like rarely invest in young talent. It's what Cloud9 does really well, and it's the only reason they're taking part of the reason they're taken so seriously. But all the other teams kind of just recycle talent. Go invest in someone new. Take a chance.
Is that an indictment on Immortals? Like, are they not? I mean, they're still relatively new, I guess, in terms of the LCS and their return. There's a lot of people there, yes, but what I'm saying is, like, is this an indictment on them as a team in terms of investing in scouting? Are they not doing a good enough job? Or is it just that they're looking at names with some sort of value or familiarity, maybe is the right word, and they just want to put them on a roster right now?
I mean, I don't think they're doing anything that other NA teams aren't also doing. So it's kind of like, I don't think it's a specific indictment on them. I think a lot of North American teams do this. And I haven't really I've seen very few teams be willing to take chances on actually putting in young talent and just kind of letting them, because like, again, the issue is you will have some bad games, right? Like you will actually just have some really rough showings. It's going to happen. And you have to let them happen so that people can improve and learn. And that's not something that a lot of North American teams I've seen are willing to do. I mean, the other side of the argument, not to get too far into NA talent, because I know we've spoken about this a lot, is that, you know, an NA player coming in is going to need more instruction than an EU player coming in, or a South Korean player coming in, or a Chinese player coming in, just based on the amateur scene and solo queue talent level and that kind of thing. But I mean, if you're willing to put in the effort, and I don't see at this point why North American teams haven't just tried to put in that effort, despite the fact that it's going to be more effort, you can just let it happen. Like, yes, you're going to have some bad games, but you know, the upside to it is actually pretty significant if you can come out that other side.
I mean, honestly, at this
quickly,
point,
last point on this, Jacob.
I was going to say, all they'd have to do to placate me and make me happy would be like Golden Guardians. That's it. Golden Guardians they have some of the talent that we understand very well in who he changed positions. So I give him a little bit of a break there, and the fact that he's like still trying to like level up as a support, right? But like they have Demonte and Hanser, who we know very well, right? In the LCS, we've seen them play for many, many years, but they do have Closer and they have FBI, right? Who are like younger talent who they've given this opportunity to, who have played in the TCL and in the LCS respectively, although FBI's stint was really short. But at least that team is giving the opportunity to younger players to build themselves up. That's all I want. That's all I want from Immortals. Doesn't have to be the whole team. You don't have to bring in 5 rookies. All you got to do is invest in a few. Stop recycling people that we already know a lot about.
Emily, what'd you hate this week in League of Legends?
Just stop doing it. So a lot of people memed Spica's Kane on TSM, and what they may not know is that Kanavi, who is widely regarded as one of the best junglers in the world right now, also played Kane jungle to a similar amount of success in the LPL. And it was both times it was in response to like a first rotation Trundle. Both times it was on blue side in last rotation. I understand why people are picking it because of the buffs a few patches ago, and also the fact that the current jungle meta right now, you can have some of these like farm heavy junglers, you know, like that we've seen Nidalee come out, we've seen Kindred come out, we've seen, you know, a lot of, you know, more power farming junglers alongside like the Trundle, and of course you're never going to get the LPL to give up Lee Sin. We've even seen set jungle over in Europe, which I think has been really interesting to watch. But stop playing Kane. Like, just stop. The upside is not there. Stop it, please. If Kanavi, and like true, he was going up against Top Esports, who's the best team in the world right now. But if Kanavi can't do it, you probably can't either. Don't take that coin flip. Don't do it.
Anyone want to add? Anyone in favor of Kane jungle? Is anyone in favor of it?
I'm not. Unless you're Navi, or I mean, even that didn't work out. So
it didn't look great.
Yeah.
Parsa kind of stomped him.
I think Kane is, there are similar champions that achieve what you're trying to get with Kane.
Yes.
That provide more than Kane and also require less team coordination than Kane, right? Like, as someone who plays that position and has done so for 6 years or 7 years since I switched to jungle, and has played a lot of that specific champion, it's actually really hard when you're not in a stack of 5, which we're talking about pro games here, but it's really hard unless you're very, very coordinated. There are better carry junglers, better AD carry junglers than Kane that achieve the same thing and require far less coordination around that one champion. So that's my thought. There are better champions that achieve the same thing. Stop playing Kane. I agree with Emily.
Please.
Tyler, what do you hate about League of Legends competitive right now?
Let's go back to the old LEC, or LCS, not LEC. LEC's production's amazing. Great job, LEC. Your production's amazing. Coming a little bit at LCS's production, and most notably, I don't want to go. Their weekend events are fun. They're fine. They need a redux. They need a reset. They need, a production overhaul, some new fresh air into it. But the weekend events are fine. I kind of want to go after the abomination that is Friday Night League / Monday Night League, where they have no clue what they're doing with it. They have no kind of idea what kind of idea they want with this Friday Night League, Monday Night League situation. It's last week might have been one of the worst. It was actually cringe-inducing. I know people say cringe-inducing a lot on the internet, but it was actually cringe-inducing. And I love the talent on LCS. I think people like Tigress and Prawley and Mark Z are actually really talented and really funny people, but it was bad. It was really, really bad. And they were trying to go for that LEC feel, right? They're like, it's Friday night. We're having fun out here. Let's do some raps. Let's do some jokes. Let's have Sushi Dragon doing some, psychedelic, crazy 3D, 4D Draven dances with bad EDM music in the background. And it just didn't work. It was really bad, and I understand. And this is someone who loved the Sushi Dragon Y2K after party from the LCS finals, where I was in Slack chat for ESPN. I'm like, oh man, this is amazing. This is really, really funny. One of the greatest performances of all time. Because A, it was unexpected, it was new, and B, you had Y2K, who I've interviewed him before. He's a really good guy. He loves League of Legends, loves video games. He's an actual really big producer. He's a huge producer. He's one of the biggest producers right now in the world. He knows music. They were playing License's track, like Mr. Brightside and other really good tracks, where when you have the psychedelics going on and the craziness, but you actually have good music also in line with it, it's a fun time. Obviously, with the DMCA stuff, you're not going to get through that. So you have to play bad EDM music.
Yeah.
So Friday Night League right now feels like they want to be wacky and fun, but still kind of buttoned up, and it's really, really bad. And they either have to, they need to overhaul most of the production and try again and, do a rebranding and try to find their own voice. But right now it just feels like they're trying to be buttoned up. They're trying to be Sports Center, but they're also trying to be wacky, the Eric Andre show at the same time. And when you combine the two and you try to put it all together, it's just trash and it's bad. Put it down. No more rapping, please. No more rapping. I don't need rapping on the LCS. On the LCS broadcast. So love the people that work there. Mark Z, the Tigers, great people, good personalities, but they have no voice right now, and the Friday Night League experiment is not going so well.
Yeah, so my issue with it, to Tyler's point, is how schizophrenic the broadcast seems. You have and just based on the personalities that you have, there's actually a potential to have a really chill and I don't know how much people like this, but a really chill vibe where you're just sitting down and you're talking about League of Legends and it's not crazy and it's different. It's more relaxed. You're still using the personalities that you have and it's not super different than the slightly more buttoned up weekend version, which is trying to be very traditional sports. It's trying to be very for a lack of better terms, Sports Center. And you can't have both, right? The one thing I think by contrast the LEC broadcast does really, really well is that they let their personalities kind of go ham to a point, and they know when to rein it in as well. So you can actually see this. I should do like some sort of fashion breakdown, but like you can actually see this in the way that they let their personalities dress and the way that they let them carry themselves in promos and on the desk. It's a very like unified feel, despite the fact that the people themselves aren't dressing like each other, right? Like you don't get the sense that there's a dress code. You get the sense that people are really expressing their personalities with the way that they dress, but it's also unified in that everyone's doing it, right? So you're allowing all of these people to showcase their personality through the like even minutia, like what they're wearing. And then that also translates to the segments they do on the broadcast, all of the prep that they do. I know because I'm a boring person. I get it. No one wants to listen to me talk about jungle pathing for hours. Like, trust me, I get it. As someone who struggles with this all the time in terms of trying to be like really informative, in-depth analysis and trying to be quote unquote fun, like I get it. I'm not fun, you know? Like I understand the struggle. I think you have to lean in to one aspect of that and shape your broadcast around that. And once you get that down, then maybe you can start expanding. But the balance between like Sushi Dragon to buttoned up analysis in the same cast is just like, no, it doesn't work. And it makes both halves look even worse in comparison.
That's the problem that I had is that and I'll be perfectly honest, that was my first introduction to Sushi Dragon, and I didn't get a first introduction to Sushi Dragon because it was on the LCS broadcast. It wasn't because he wasn't entertaining, it wasn't impressive. It was because the LCS broadcast brought it to a point where I didn't find it entertaining within the context of this particular broadcast. So I didn't get him. I didn't get it from that context. It was a wrong introduction for much of the audience. So maybe from his perspective, it was good because there's ample numbers and a lot of people watching it might already know who he is. But for new people like me being introduced to him, it wasn't a good introduction.
So
I'll put it that way.
Here's some interesting. So I saw Monty and Doa tweeting about this, the fact that Doa currently does not have a full-time gig and is living in LA, and that he would make a good addition to the LCS broadcast. I do agree with that but I would like to see someone like him, like either of them, truly, do a little bit of creative consulting for the LCS. Because here's the place I like find the LCS, right? And I get this like sense from talking to people who work in it, who own teams in it, or or even work for Riot. Like they are on track to become a very large North American sport, right? Like the ownership groups overlap very closely with a lot of the NBA in particular, but also other sports, right? Like the LCS is a real sport, right? And I won't say it is as important to American sports culture as the LPL is to Chinese sports culture. It certainly isn't. The LPL is a huge deal in China in a way that nothing else is in esports relative to sports culture in the world. Maybe the LCK, maybe, but not even close, I don't think. But nonetheless, the LCS is on this trajectory to eventually get there, right? And I think they feel that. But as someone who's worked at a sports media company for 4 years and has covered esports at said sports media company, a la ESPN, or AKA ESPN, for 4 years, there's nothing I have learned more in my time of 4 years at ESPN that esports and esports fans, there's very little overlap in taste with sports fans. There just isn't. Right, like there's a little bit with basketball. There's a little bit with mixed martial arts and wrestling because the audience age is more asimilar in those sports to esports. But like the 55-year-old who watches the MLB and the 20-year-old who watches the LCS, there could not be a wider gap between what those two people care about and what appeals to them on a broadcast. That said, I feel like the LCS is taking itself way too seriously. It wants to be the big sport, right? It wants to be the NBA, it wants to be the MLB, it wants to be the NFL, which is a great aspiration, but you have to realize that your audience is in many cases 20 to 30 years younger than what you are aspiring to be, and you have to think outside the box, color with different colored crowns, and really like rethink the whole thing a little bit to get there. The LCS feels lazy. I say that as someone who likes a lot of people, again, because I think some people take this as like, oh, he just has bad relationships with people. I met Chris Krigley when he got hired. Been very supportive and spoke highly of him. I like Dave Stewart, who runs that broadcast. But it does feel very North American traditional sports, and I don't think that's what the audience enjoys whatsoever. Certainly not what I enjoy when I want to watch esports events. I like when people get a little creative, and people can rag on Flashpoint and whatever else. Their team sucked. But a lot of those teams are in the LCS, and Flashpoint was fun because the content was fun, because it was different. And that's what, like, Fortnite doesn't appeal to me, but I enjoy some of the risks that Epic takes on its broadcast or at its events, having gone to the Fortnite World Cup and several other Twitch events that they've done. Like, those are fun, right? Like, come on, LCS. Your audience is a little bit older than the Fortnite kids. They're not much, but they're younger than the Counter-Strike people. Find this nice happy medium. Stop trying to like fit yourself, round peg and square hole. So yeah.
I will say, let me take this and just quickly go into what I hated here. And hate's a strong word for what I'm about to say here, but it does feel at times like the LCS. It does feel at times like the LCS felt like the Steve Buscemi meme, "How you do, fellow kids."
Yeah,
It felt like that a little bit at times.
Yeah, definitely.
But I do think, I don't think it's from a lack of trying. I do think that there could be more younger voices making bigger decisions. Perhaps that's what's needed there, like what you said about consultancy there. Now, I don't want to see Doa rapping. I'll say that. I really don't want to see Doa rapping.
That could
but
be
I do think
fun,
Doa
actually.
has some knowledge. Well, yeah, I guess maybe once, but I do think that Doa would have some knowledge, and people in that ilk would have some knowledge there. Case in point about effort, though, my choice for hate this week was the LCS display. I guess it's a subset of, finding the identity, etc. To me, I understand where they were going with that, meaning the LCS. Changing things up is always good. I am always a proponent of trying new things and seeing if they stick and if they work. I'm a proponent of that. I appreciate that very much. The thing is that maybe in this case, it was a little too simplistic. Maybe some of the things tried were a little bit too unnecessary in a way. Like, we moved where the kill count is and the gold count is in real time updating. I don't know if I necessarily need that in during a League of Legends game. I like, just it was very in my face. Like, the first thing that I notice is the gold count and just the positioning of everything.
Mm-hmm.
To me, just, I don't know. Like, it looked like, to be honest with you, this looks like the prototype to what the current display looks like, in a way.
I love the gold switch, actually. What I do think they need to do, though, because gold is always updated in real time, I think the big thing with that is they need to go back to the point.
So that's what I meant.
K.
I meant,
Yeah,
like,
the
the five.
Like,
Yeah.
I actually
Too
love
many
that
numbers.
I actually love that it's in the center. I think that's actually really important to understanding, like, how League of Legends works. However, I think that, so I like a lot of the ideas behind the new HUD. I think the execution was lacking, especially with, I don't know how they were updating like the turrets, but they were like significantly behind a lot of the time. Like, there was one, I think it was in the TL game, that it didn't even register that they had gotten the mid-tier one for almost the entirety, if not the entirety of the game. And that's actually a massive problem, because the idea behind the HUD is to communicate information as quickly as possible, right? Like, the whole idea behind doing this update at all is because more people are watching on their mobile devices, and you want to be able to look at it really briefly and be like, oh, this is where we're at in regards to the game, right?
Yeah.
Which is why the gold count changed, which I really like, because again, I actually think gold is way more important than kills. If you're looking at a League of Legends game outside of maybe like a few LPL games where everyone's just killing each other all the time, and therefore it's an accurate reflection of who has gold at one given time. But in terms of like how it's set up, I think it definitely needs tweaking, and I think the input obviously needs tweaking, because the whole point of it and purpose is to update as quickly as possible, and it wasn't. So in that regard, that was not working correctly.
And also, and maybe it might take me
I disagree with the gold thing, though. I love the fact that
you've converted me. I understand exactly where you're coming from on the gold thing. So I changed my mind on the gold thing. You have done a great job on that, Emily. I will say that I think that I need to get used to the display. It didn't come across as an immediate positive for me, I guess.
I think that it's the potential there is though is there. Sorry, meaning that like this is a good idea. One thing that I really like that our own company does really well is if you're not watching a football game, or if you can't watch a football game because say you don't have a subscription or whatever, your TV package doesn't include whatever channel American football game is on, you can watch the ESPN Gamecast, right? That has like all the animations and all the counters and all the box scores, right? Like that's always been something I've really enjoyed about ESPN.com and like the people who created that. I think that like Riot's trying to create something that's like a companion that is similar. Right, you obviously want to watch the game with it, but it gives you real-time stats because, like, and like Arda, I know you've been in this position before. When you first got in League, I remember like it takes a lot of explaining to get into League for the first time when you've never been into it, right? Like you have to really go through it, and so like for an experienced eye like myself or Emily or Tyler, right, who have watched and played a lot of this game, there's things we're gonna catch really quickly, whereas like having like a heads-up display like that is actually super useful in explaining the fact to players that may not understand minutia that they can take away data points. I generally think just on that point, very tiny point here, the data is just not very well explained in League of Legends by Riot itself. I think that third-party websites like Oracle's Elixir, what Tim Seven Houston does there, and some other people in the community, Emily being one of them, explains data to a little bit more breadth. But I wish Riot themselves talked about what data means in League of Legends.
To that point, I will say it's really difficult to do that through a heads-up display because
of course, already too much
just
there.
Like way too many variables. So you do need that would be tying back into what we were talking about previously. That would be on the broadcast to look at like how they're analyzing things and if they do want to do like a more even like chill like standard sports broadcast. Even if they are doing that, there's actually room to expand on statistics. But I actually agree. As an aside, I think the way that we talk about stats in League generally stinks about 90% of the time.
I think more like a
last
LOL,
point on this, we got to move on.
I was gonna say like a LOL esports explainer on stats would be helpful, I think, to a lot of new people because like I meet League of Legends fans all the time who like this is their first year watching it. That's still happening, right? Like this game's like 10 years old and there's still new people coming into it for the first time and watching it for the first time. So like having like a this is what this means, right? And like literally just like an explainer of some form could just be helpful. Just like an encyclopedia guide of what a stat means in League of Legends.
All right, we're going to start a new segment here called Fact or Fiction. What I'm going to do is I'm going to throw a phrase out there. I'm going to pick one of our analysts to determine first whether it's fact or fiction, and then maybe a debate will ensue. We'll see how this goes. Emily, you are up first. G2 will lose more than 5 matches this split.
So let's take a look at G2's previous records with this team that they have, right? So last year and this past spring, we've got 13-5 in 2019 spring. And that was, if you remember, the first role swapped lineup where everyone was kind of looking at them and being like, I don't know how this is going to go. They did lose 5 games that split, but then it's a solid 15-3 and 15-3 record in the regular round robin. Now, the thing I do want to bring up that Jacob touched upon earlier that I was going to lead this segment off with is that they were not able to practice going into the split. So I don't think their performance in this week 1, which also was unfortunately a super week, that I don't think their performance this week 1 is going to reflect their performance for the rest of the split due to extenuating circumstances with perks and the fact that they weren't able to prep and practice going into this week as soundly as they would have any other week, right? I don't think they'll lose more than 5 matches this split based on the fact that they like swap back. This is still the same lineup. The first time they were trying this lineup, they lost 5 games exactly. Yes, it was not a great week for G2, but I think they'll be totally fine, and I don't think they'll lose more than 5 games. Maybe 5 because you already have the 2, but I don't think they'll lose more than that.
It seems premature to say this. 5 matches. Come on.
I'll play the contrarian here. I'll say they'll lose 6 matches. Again, I don't think by the end product it's
by
gonna
being
really...
contrarian, you're saying one more than the number.
No, I'm going fiction here because I think it's gonna be one more than 5. Like, I don't think anyone on this panel is gonna be like, oh yeah, G2's not gonna make the final. They're not gonna go to Worlds and do very well. Like, I do think they're gonna win LEC, but I also do think like it's going to be a bit of tough sledding in the early going. And I think this team, they have 3 championships. Like they have 7 championships overall as an organization. These guys know what it means to go in the playoffs prepared. They know with the new format of being a double elimination bracket. I do think they're going to be slip-ups in the early stages. They're going to get some losses that they usually wouldn't. I do think LEC is stronger than it has been in previous seasons. I think there's a lot of depth in this top 10. So I don't think there might be 1 or 2 easy wins here or there, but they're going to be tested every single week, and every single team has G2 circled on their calendar. No one goes into a G2 game being like, it doesn't matter if we play our best. Like, every team wants to beat G2, especially the Fnacs and the Origins of the world. A win versus G2 can make your entire year. So I do think they will drop 6 games, maybe 7, but I do think by playoffs, regardless of where they are in the standings, they're still going to make the final. So I'm going to say they're going to have a bit of a softer regular season. Obviously, not practicing as much, Perks going through things. It's a difficult start of the season. They're going to drop a few games, getting back into form. And by playoffs, they're going to steamroll and win as per usual. But I do think they're going to have a softer regular season.
Yeah, my thought is that they just need to they can't let this slide. Teams are improving in the LEC. Look at like Vitality and Misfits when I make that statement, right? Like, I already think that like Mad Lions, Origin, and Fnatic can all, Origin inconsistently iffy, but I still think those 3 teams can compete and beat G2 on any given day. I think that Vitality and Misfits, though, are sort of the 2 teams that I'm looking to like ascend to be able to beat G2 on any given day. So like, I feel like G2 has to take every single match seriously throughout this split in a way that they probably did not last split.
My counter argument to that is that I think it's good that they have to take every match seriously because we've seen sometimes what happens when G2 doesn't take every match as seriously.
Yeah, I don't disagree with that point. I'm just saying like to make this fiction rather than fact, to make this fiction that they would lose 5 games or more, they have to take it seriously. Otherwise, this will definitely be fact if they don't take everybody seriously.
Well, speaking of G2 taking matches seriously, I will take the next question posed. Fnatic will win the LEC summer split. I'm going to go with fiction, not just because you can take the field and feel pretty confident that you're going to win that bet, but also bring it back to G2. There could very well be a situation where G2 could play spoiler, and they will definitely take a matchup like that seriously, especially if it's Fnatic. And so I do think that G2 they have an uphill battle to climb in terms of occupying that top spot like they were in pretty much all of the spring split and have been historically in the LEC, at least in recent history. But that doesn't mean that they're out of it by any stretch of the imagination. Based on everything we've said here, the fact that they haven't been able to scrim, all the circumstances with Perks and his father, rest in peace to Perks' dad, there's a lot going on there, and I don't think that this is going to be a situation like Team Liquid experienced in Spring Split in the LCS where there was just too much to overcome. I think that these are things that are only temporary, and I think that G2 will come back stronger than ever. And guess what? New challengers are emerging too. Rogue is 3-0. SK Gaming is 2-1. Who saw that coming? Like, there's so
context
much
there, Arda.
Yeah, still, but like it Vitality. Like, I mean, there's a lot to be excited about here, but still, for to say, especially after week 1, Fnatic being the team that's going to be first, they're not even in first place right now. I mean, they're tied for first, but they're not. I mean, they're tied for first, but that doesn't mean that they're going to remain there for the entire split. Great first week. Show me more.
I'll keep it simple. This is fiction. Until Fnatic can actually conquer their boogeyman of G2 in a final, I'm never going to take them. Even in a weakened G2 state We still have a long season to go. I'm still picking G2 to win by the end of the season. So by proxy, that means Fnatic's not going to win LEC Summer. I mean, if they're going to do well at Worlds, I do think Fnatic's a really good team, a world-class team, but they're not winning LEC Summer until they prove to me they can beat G2, and they have not done that yet. So, fiction.
All right,
Yes,
sorry, Emily.
Oh no, I was just gonna say I agree. If there's one hope for Fnatic though, it's that they showed some really interesting champion diversity this past week, and they showed that they were kind of willing to play around, especially with the Reckless Syndra. I liked that from Fnatic, but yeah, I can't find myself willing to bet on them. Sorry.
Tyler, fact or fiction? Vitality missed playoffs in the summer split.
That's actually a really, really tough one. That might be one of the toughest ones we've had. I'm going to go fiction. They're going to miss, right? So I'll say fact. They're going to miss the LEC Summer playoffs. Because even though I do think they did a really good first week, and I do think they have a lot of really promising players, I think there are a few teams that are ahead of them in the development cycle. And I think Rogue kind of started this with building through these rookies, and you're going to build this rookie team, and it takes, a split or two to really find your groove. It was Rogue, and now we're seeing it with, Misfits with their young players, Mad Lions with their young players. I think there's a few teams ahead of Vitality in the development pool. I even though I would love to be like, oh yeah, Origin's going to bomb out, not even make top 6, I do think they're too talented to at least not make that top 6 position. So I'm going to say Vitality misses the cut. But I really think that if they can build around this core, and if they continue, giving these guys, the NA thing of being like, oh, they had a bad week, let's just replace them with a veteran and, try to sneak into playoffs. If they keep this core, even if they have their downturns, and they're going to have their weeks where they look poor and they look out of sync and they get crushed by the Mad Lions and G2s of the world, if they can build around this core and trust in them, they're going to be really good in 2021 in the future. So not this split, but they're very close in my mind to, being that next Rogue or Mad Lions that can be that next generation in the LEC.
One victory against G2 didn't sell you?
No.
No,
Emily, go ahead.
I think the big thing is that you have to look at the competition. You have Fnatic and G2, who are like 6 teams make playoffs, right? We have Fnatic and G2. We can pretty much, I would say, lock those 2 teams in my opinion. I don't see a world where Fnatic and G2 don't make playoffs. And then you have Rogue, Mad Lions, Misfits, and Origin, all like vying for those spots. In order for Vitality to sneak in, one of those teams has to drop completely out. I agree, despite the fact that I think Origin did not look great in week 1. I think that they'll still probably make playoffs. So then you're looking at a team like Mad Lions or Misfits to drop off. People might have already forgotten, but I mean, in my opinion, Misfits should have won that game against Fnatic. So, I think that I still really like this Misfits team, actually. I think they have more promise than last splits team. So for me, the thing with Vitality is I think they're dangerous. I think they'll be able to take games off of teams, and I think they'll have a really interesting outcome on the standings. But in terms of them being able to be consistent enough to make playoffs, I think that's going to be a huge challenge.
I think that the race for 5 and 6 is going to be really interesting, because I think that if I had to be a betting man, I think that Rogue and Mad Lions will be 3 and 4. I don't know in what order. I think Fnatic will be 2, and I think G2 will be 1 by the time the split ends. But I do think that 5 and 6 has a couple different teams that could be there, whether that be Origin, Misfits, Vitality, and SK. There are 4 teams that viably could be 5 or 6 in my opinion.
I'm gonna put you on the spot in one of them then, because I'm gonna go to you for our next question. Fact or fiction? SK Gaming will make the summer split playoffs.
I say fiction, but I'm gonna say really close that they, again, there's a chance. It is not 0. The thing is about SK is that because they've done 2 role swaps, they've made a mid laner go top and a top laner go mid. We don't know what the sample size for these players looks like when they are playing these roles and in this formation. They had a coaching change in Jesus, right, who is actually a former SK player and went to Worlds with SK once upon a time, and he's a pretty solid coach by most accounts. So I don't know. I want to say fiction. I think that they're just right outside of... I would bet on Misfits, Origin, and Vitality before I'd bet on SK right now. but it's not impossible. It is certainly not impossible that SK slides in and gets 6th by some stretch. The LEC is very competitive.
Yeah.
This split, especially in that middle to lower part of the pack. Like Schalke had an abysmal week, but I don't believe Schalke is all for lost. Like I do think they can be competitive in a world eventually, but they're also a really young team. So there's a lot of variance here in the 5 to 10 position. So I won't fully count SK out, but I don't think they're going to make playoffs.
So just to fact check, because you did call me out on this rightfully, SK did go 2-1 this weekend. However, they lost to Mad Lions, maybe to be expected. They beat Schalke, who struggled all weekend. They also beat Origin, who surprisingly struggled this weekend. So not exactly a convincing sounding 2-1, Emily, but still 2-1, but enough. I mean, maybe it's only week 1, so we haven't necessarily seen enough yet, but to make playoffs, though, like you said, those 6 teams that you mentioned, it's going to be tough to break in there.
Yeah, it's super tough. And also, this is a super week. And I always feel really weird coming out of super weeks in terms of how teams are doing because just they're exhausting, right? They're exhausting to prep and it's exhausting to lead your split off with one. But to more of our point, I think despite the fact that I also find it hard to believe that Vitality will make playoffs, I think that Vitality have a stronger chance right now than SK do, just based on the fact that I see them as a more dangerous team, given the young talent that they do have now on that lineup. But I think it's going to be, again, to all of our points that we keep repeating, the middle of the pack of the LEC is so close.
Yeah, this is fashion. Copy paste what I said about Vitality, throw it to SK, continue running these guys out, build from here, look into the 2021. If you make playoffs, that's awesome. If you don't, it's good. Build around these players, find the players that you want to be your core, move into 2021. They're doing it correctly. Congratulations, LEC. You're building a very deep franchise league as a North American who watches while LEC brings in new decks every year and, shuffle in new cards, the LCS is basically just shuffling the same 52 cards over and over trying to make it work. So congrats to LEC, SK, Vitality. Don't think they're going to make the playoffs, but very bright futures.
Speaking of bright futures, that's exactly what Doublelift thinks of his his new old time with TSM. I did a recent interview with him. That full interview is now available on our YouTube channel, YouTube/ESPN ESports. One of the things that I asked him about was where his level of motivation is. That was certainly a meme. We know that he talked about it in Spring Split, but it was interesting to hear him talk about exactly how passionate he feels about the game and in particular about winning, and specifically LCS championships, which he says he hasn't really felt this motivated to win in a very long time. He also put a number to how many LCS championships he wants to win. Here's a clip from that interview. When was the time you felt this motivated to win an LCS title in your career?
I seriously cannot remember the last time I was this motivated to win LCS. I want to win so bad. I've never been as emotionally or mentally or just overall just affected by my performance in LCS. If I play bad, I feel awful. If I play well, I feel great. There's been days and there have been years where I play LCS and it's just if I play bad, whatever, I'll bounce back. If I play great, whatever, it's a normal day. It doesn't have the same weight to it, I guess. But now it has a lot of weight. LCS is the most important thing in my life again. And maybe I had to lose. Maybe I had to switch teams or something to realize it. But after you've been winning for so long, it sounds like I'm humble bragging or something. But it seriously just becomes really normal. And you don't really think about why it's important to you anymore. You're just doing it because it's what you're good at. It's what you've been doing. But now I realize it's so important to me. It's pretty much everything. So I don't want to. Yeah, I don't want to lose anymore. That's it. And I haven't felt like that maybe since season 5 on CLG.
What are the goals that you have set for yourself that you need to achieve before you can feel like you can even think about retirement?
Well, I want to win so much that there's no chance anyone's ever going to catch up. So that would be really cool. I know that right now, it's honestly kind of unlikely that anyone catches up, but I want to win, I don't know, maybe like 10 times. So 3 more. I think that'd be really cool. I never actually put a number to it, right? I just want to know, I want to like win so much no one can catch up.
So that brings us to the fact or fiction question regarding Doublelift this week. Will Doublelift win 3 more LCS titles? I'll take this one. Or at least I'll start it. I want him to win 3 more LCS titles. Let me start with that. I want this to happen. I want to see a player win double digits in the LCS or anywhere. Faker has 9, correct?
Yes, he has 9.
Faker has 9. So I would love to see, whether it's Faker or otherwise, a competitor win double digits in terms of championships, right?
It happened in Seiya. Seiya has, I think, 11 Latin American titles.
But in the Major 4.
Yeah, in the Major 4. I think,
in the Major 4.
10 in the Major 4 is a big accomplishment.
Right. Sorry, let me clarify. The Major 4. I would love for it to happen in the LCS. At this point, as we stand right now, I don't even know if this team, TSM, can win 3 championships as it stands.
No.
Back to back to back. I don't even know how much longer Doublelift will be playing League of Legends competitive. I honestly don't.
It's a hard ask.
It's a very hard ask. But I also seriously wonder, like, how many years do we think Doublelift has left? How many splits do we think Doublelift has left?
It's NA.
I mean,
he plays till he's 72.
Yeah, I think
and he'll sell the contract.
He'll keep playing as long as he wants to play.
Yeah.
I mean, I think the big thing with Doublelift is that, like, it's hard for him, and he said this in the past when he was on TSM previously, it's hard for him to get excited about spring given how little it has towards, like, winning a world championship. And that's why he previously took a split off, because he was like, I'm not sure if I want to keep playing anymore. I have a lot of doubts about my own motivation. I'm going to stream this split and see what I like about it. And he hated it, and he found he missed competition. So I think his motivation will always kind of wane a bit more in spring, especially given the new structural changes and how there's no points towards worlds in that split. However, in terms of how much longer he can keep playing, I think he can definitely play enough splits to win 3 more titles. Whether he can win 3 more titles, I actually think that's going to be super difficult.
So I guess I should specify and say play at the level to be able to compete for
Play
a
at a
championship at all
level.
times.
He could Payne Manning it. He can Payne Manning it, get a title, being like the anchor of a team, getting dragged to a championship. But I'm gonna go with fiction here, just because I think if he gets a 10, I think that's bad for North America. That's really bad for North America if Doublelift can win 3 more, because I want more competitiveness in the region. I want Cloud9 to start a dynasty. I want these newer teams. I want 100 Thieves to, 100 Thieves is doing a really good job building out their academy system. And I think in a year or two, when these players like Tenacity and Kenev and Pumi and these other really, really young 17, 16-year-old players that they are building up through their next system and their academy system starts coming to the LCS, I think they have a really good opportunity to like come in and be that Mad Lions style team or the Rogue style team that NA has been needing for a long while outside of the C9, development structure. So for the hope of North America, this is nothing against Doublelift. I would love if we got to 10 titles, but I think if Doublelift doesn't reach 10 titles, that means more newer talent and better teams are being built in North America, and that is a better future for the LCS. If Doublelift continues winning championships, that means he's because Doublelift's not going to go on a team that's rebuilding. He's going to be on teams that have established stars, veteran players who he knows he's going to win with. So if he gets to 10, that means that these built-in veteran squads keep on winning. I want to see new, fresh talent. I want these younger players to rise up from Academy, the 100 Thieves Academy, and the Next System, and FlyQuest, and I want these teams to battle Doublelift to give him a reason to fight. I want him to win a title or 2 more, but I want these newer teams to come to light. Because, in a world where we have the same system we've had for the last 5 years, where it's just the same players shuffling in and out, Doublelift could win 10 more titles. Who the hell knows, right? But I'm just going to say he ends with 9. I'm going to say he ends with 9 titles and then retires, goes off into the sunset.
I love how you deprive him of the one singular title he needs to go Doublelift. Double digits.
He gets 9. He gets
Rip.
9, and he's like, I'm done.
So I definitely don't think he's getting one this summer. I think
No.
Cloud9's too good. And there's a couple of other teams back of them I would put ahead of TSM in that race to even dethrone Cloud9, but I don't think it's happening either way. I think C9's got this one in the bag. Let's say in the 2020 offseason, someone goes and offers Blabber or Licorice a giant load of money to go to some other team, right? And like the C9 or like the dynasty in the making is just split up, right? Or whatever, right? Like because somebody just sells out, right? I don't think that will happen either, but nonetheless possible. Because I think there's a huge market for everyone on C9 right now. So even if that were to happen and C9 were to get disbanded, I'm not so certain that Doublelift and TSM, if he stays on TSM for the rest of his career, with Bjergsen presumably and whatever else they decide to keep around, right? Like, I'm not so certain he wins another one at all. And it's possible. I won't say it's not possible. But I do think that there are other teams, Evil Geniuses, who have some long-term plans of probably, and we'll get to this in a second, probably bringing Hooni in 2021 as their top laner when he gets residency. I think teams like them and like FlyQuest, who are just going to continue to iterate on their success, can even box him out from winning another one altogether. And I think to your point, like he may play for a very long time, but I think at some point he's going to grow frustrated that he's not winning. And he's just gonna walk away.
That's when his motivation will tank to an all-time low.
Yeah, when like he plays like another 2 or 3 splits and he just doesn't win one because there are gonna be really good teams in the LCS that are growing, as to Tyler's point. Maybe not through developmental system, but at least by adding pieces around what they have going well for them. And those teams box Doublelift out, and then he's done because he's frustrated that he can't get another one. At what point does he give up? Is the big question.
Not this split, that's for sure.
No,
Emily,
of course.
next question to Emily.
Stop.
This is an interesting one. This is an interesting question. Team Liquid can reach the LCS finals this split. Win or lose?
I think they can. I mean, I think like, so if we're looking at it just from a not even mathematical standpoint, but like we're making the presumption that Cloud9 is the best team in the league and they are going to make finals again. I think the toss-up to have another finalist is pretty wide. Like you're thinking of Evil Geniuses, you're thinking of FlyQuest. And after this week, I think people should be looking at TL because, not because their performances were like completely infallible. Obviously, the absolute stomp that ended up being the TL TSM game was really, really fun to watch. But then the Golden Guardians game was a lot closer, pun intended, I guess, because I think Closer played insanely well in that match. But I think the big thing with TL and talking to them, talking to Broxa, I talked to Jensen for an article that's going to come out tomorrow. But I think this new team does really recognize that they need to be more proactive. And Broxa said it prior to when the season started. And I think you definitely saw that, especially in the TSM game, where they made a lot of early moves that were really important. I think Core JJ has been playing insanely well. I loved his Bard. I loved what he was doing on that champion. And I think this team has a lot of potential if they can keep making early proactive moves, because I think that's something that a lot of North American teams have a lot of problems doing. They tend to default to being a lot more passive, TSM being one of them. And if there's a window for TL to make finals, I think it would be there.
Yeah,
4 words, Arda. 4 words.
Hmm.
Chugga, chugga, choo, choo. The TL train is all chugging along. We're going to finals. See you there, Cloud9. Probably not going to win. Then we're going to Worlds. Grand Plaza, the group Grand Plaza. It's going to be great. Going to get 06th. It'll be fantastic.
Oh, yeah.
Wow.
Even worse than last year?
There's 4 tries.
Oh, six.
Arda,
It's
They're
single
gonna get
game.
clutched gaming?
LPL teams usually drop single
There's
games.
4
I'm just throwing
Chinese
that out
teams.
there.
There's 4 European teams now. We're not getting to farm probably the Taiwanese teams like we used to be able to do. Yeah, so we're going to the finals. The tactical train is a chugging along. See you in the finals, Arda. TL versus Cloud9. Book it right now. Guaranteed 100% in the books.
That Taiwanese farm comment brought me back to 2017 when Flash Wolves kept TSM from advancing out of groups.
TSM, that was not Team Liquid. Let's move on.
All right, Tyler, take this one. Evil Geniuses. I mean, Evil Geniuses can defeat C9 once, at least once in the regular season.
True. They did it. They took a game off them in the playoffs last split. C9's not unstoppable. They are by far the best team in the league, but they also have kind of that G2 in them. They have that kind of a trollish factor. I think it's been good, right? Like, I think the one thing that we kind of came into the season being about C9, this new C9 team, is like, they're gonna be good, but are they gonna have an identity? Are they gonna lose that, charm that the old C9 did because they didn't have Sneaky? But they've been great. Like, they're really marketable. They're a trolly, fun team, makes a lot of jokes. They're constantly bullying each other on Twitter. Probably the best Twitter team, if you follow their Twitter, probably the best Twitter team in the game right now in the LCS, outside of just being the best LCS team. But yeah, EG can take a game off them. They're not perfect. C9's still gonna win the split, but EG, sure. C9's not going to go 18-0. They're going to lose at least 3 or 4 games this split, I would believe. So
Good for them,
let's
by the
bring it
way.
back.
They should lose a few games because I talked to Blabber and Spin about this a few weeks ago that they need to lose a few games more generally to understand their flaws because they didn't get MSI as sort of the barometer of here's where we're bad because we're getting crushed by some European or Chinese team, right? I think that MSI would have benefited them immensely, but because they ran people over so heavily in the spring split and only lost less than a handful of games in the spring split altogether, right? It's really easy for them to get complacent and go, we're really good, but then they go to Worlds and they just get stomped. So they need to lose a few games to be able to shore, not intentionally, but I'm saying it would be good for them if they lost to Evil Genius. That's why I class TSM or TL. That would be good for the health of Cloud9 as a team as they look to go to Worlds and compete at international competition.
Yeah, I mean, it's a single game round robin, so I think I would take fact over fiction, honestly. I think EG looked really good. I don't necessarily think it will happen this coming week, but I think they can take a single game off of C9 for sure.
Jacob, I can't wait to hear you talk about this one. I just can't wait. How do you feel? Fact or fiction? Hooni, you may or may not have reported on him previously, once or twice. Hooni will not play a single match for the Evil Geniuses LCS main roster this split.
Fact. Until 2021. And the reason I say that is because there's a timer on him that after this split, and this is why this deal makes a lot of sense for Evil Geniuses to acquire him, he is going to be a resident at the end of this year. He will be given the opportunity to declare. He has played in North America long enough, although not consistently, but the way the rule works, technically, he's played three full seasons, will have played 3 full seasons in North America, right? On Echo Fox, Immortals, and, or actually 4, sorry. Echo Fox, Immortals, Clutch, and now Evil Geniuses, Clutch/Dig, and now Evil Geniuses. He will be eligible to declare North American residency, and therefore he will be a very high prized asset that Evil Geniuses is now secured on a multi-year deal. So he will not play. I don't think he'll play this. I think that, if anything, to our point earlier, he's lit a fire under Kumo's ass in a way that's actually really well. I think Kumo's a great player anyway. It has a high upside. I think he's behind trajectory in terms of there are a lot of good young top laners in the LCS. I look at people like Licorice as a good example of that, right? And then there are veteran top laners who are very competitive, like Someday, also in the LCS, right? But I think that he's not as good as either of those players. But I do think that we have not seen the ceiling for Kumo. I think that maybe this summer, because he does have somebody waiting there to take a spot, that opportunity, he's got to play really hard because he's on a timer too. Because if he doesn't perform, then Hooni will be there in 2021. But I do think that it's way more important to have Bang at the AD carry position than it is to trade Bang for Deathly out. And when you make that switch, and that's what has to happen to put Hooni in. I think Bang is way more valuable as an AD carry than Deathly. I think the margin between Kumo and Hooni, based on the way that Evil Geniuses play, is not so massive that it's worth making that trade for Deathly and Bang.
Can I just ask one follow-up question? Sorry, just let me ask one follow-up question on me before we get to your point. One thing Artemis said that he sort of revealed, he wouldn't reveal the actual number, but he said that Hooni's being paid way less. I mean, clearly anyone would have guessed that, but he's being paid way less at Evil Geniuses. Do we know any ballpark figure on that? Like, do we know how much less?
I would guess on annual salary. I still think his multi-year deal is worth more than $1 million cumulatively, meaning the I believe it's a 2-year, is worth collectively more than a million, right? If you add both years together.
Okay. So like 500K, 600K kind of thing?
My guess is about 700K. That seems about the going price for a top laner in the LCS. My guess is the deal is probably about $1.5 million over 2 years. That would be my guess. So he's taken but yeah, that would be my guess based off the market and sort of what I know. But yes, we did report that he was negotiating a new salary when going to Evil Geniuses. They did technically, because of the way employment law works, they did technically trade him from, he got traded from Big Cross. Yeah, we went over that previous time when we talked about it originally. He technically got traded, but the contract terms did not go with him. So the $2.3 million deal didn't come along. So and we did report that he was going to negotiate a lower salary. But yes, that's correct.
My apologies, Emily. I just wanted to get that info there.
I was going to say I am actually going to take fiction on this. I think that for at least one game, they'll start the Hooni Deathly package. And not even necessarily, like, just because they can and they might want to try it out. I don't know. I don't see, I don't disagree with anything that Jacob said in terms of what Bang brings to the team versus what Hooni brings to the team. But I still think that there's 1 week, like maybe, they're going up against CLG or they're going up against a team that doesn't have the best record, and they'll bring in the Hooni Deathly package just to try it out on the main stage.
We're running out of time, so I'm going to ask one more. Go ahead, Tyler.
That's prediction. They'll play one game, just like Emily said. They're going to try it out.
All right, so if they're gonna do it, it will be on July the 5th, because on July the 5th they play Immortals.
Oh, just to give them Well, that leads us perfectly, since we're up against it on time. This will actually be the last question we ask here in Fact or Fiction. So Emily, given what Jacob just said there and how he craftily selected Immortals to be the team in this hypothetical scenario where Hooni would play in the game, this could lead people to imply that Immortals season is already washed. So, Fact or Fiction, Immortals season already over out of the gates.
I mean, in terms of already over, you mean not making playoffs? Because I still think it's NA. So honestly, anything can happen in terms of making playoffs. But if you're talking about, like, is this team going to go forward and do super well in playoffs or contend for a title? No. In that regard, I do think Immortal season's already over. But in terms of, like, betting on NA playoff teams, it's actually even trickier than betting on EU playoff teams, because with EU, you're just like, oh man, there's so many rosters, like so much young talent. They're all vying for each other. It's going to be great. And then with NA, you're just like, ugh, which team is going to kind of sneak in there, So, yeah, I think, I mean, jokes aside, I think that I won't put it, like, out of the realm of possibility just because NA traditionally has a lot of parity. But in terms of, is their season already over? Like, can they contend for a title? No, I don't think they can.
Let's end on this. Pick a number. How many games does Smithy start this split?
I hope he starts, like, next week.
16. 16. It'd be silly.
Just bring him back. Like, please.
Yeah, you spent too much money to sit him on the bench. He's going to get 16. I think they realize.
The remainder of the season? Yeah, okay.
Yeah, I think they're going to bring him back, and then they're just going to write it out.
Interesting.
There's no way he doesn't come back unless they're trading him.
Yeah, if they trade him, then that's the only thing.
Okay,
I think
fair
10.
enough.
I think 10.
10? Okay.
Yeah,
So
I think Potluck will get 6 more looks for a total of 8 games altogether, and Xmithy will get 10.
Okay, interesting. All right, that does it for us here on the Rift Rewind. There's a question in the chat from Najawin that says, are you moving the quiz show to a new time in the week? We haven't confirmed that quite yet, so we haven't gotten the word quite yet. Something is happening. I'm going to leave you with that. I'm sure there's going to be an announcement on Twitter coming up soon. But fear not, for those who are enjoying the quiz show format, something is it will be returning in some way, shape, or form. The reason it didn't happen last week is because the LCS and the timing, everything, it overlapped with on Friday nights. So that's the reason why we didn't do it last week. But don't worry, it's going to happen somewhere, some way. So that's going to continue. So next week, this show will resume on Twitch. For this week only, we are hosting the Brawl 10K, which is Lawler's Rocket League tournament, which is really cool. So that's happening all week on Twitch. And by the way, this is also available in podcast form, wherever you get your podcasts. Apple Podcasts, Google Play, Spotify, no matter where you get them. You can now hear us in audio form only. Rift Rewind and 2 other shows as well. I believe it's Search and Destroy and the Valorant show are also available in podcast form. So just look up ESPN Esports wherever you get your podcasts, and that will be all under one feed. But that does it for us here on the ESPN League of Legends show, the Rift Rewind. Thanks for watching. We'll catch you next week.